Good morning. My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 26 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Making the Most of Distribution with the Virginia Beer Distribution Company, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network. Stay tuned for our next craft beverage webinar taking place March 25th at 11 a.m. So mark your calendars for that one. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted and the chat feature is turned off. But if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box. We have also enabled a live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the Virginia SBDC Craft Beverage Assistance Program Manager, Chris Van Orden.
Thank you, Sheila. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's conversation about the Virginia Beer Distribution Company. I'm going to say VBDC going forward. As Sheila said, my name is Chris Van Orden, and I serve as manager of the Craft Beverage Assistance Program at the Virginia Small Business Development Center here at George Mason University. So today's program is going to be a free-flowing discussion about the options available to Virginia breweries under VBDC. You can put any questions that you might have in the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to answer everything either during or after the webinar. And with that, I'm excited to welcome today's speaker, Dakota Rust, who's the operations manager for VBDC. Welcome, Dakota.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. So kick things off, right? People might have heard of Virginia Wine Distribution Company. Virginia Beer Distribution Company is a little bit newer. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of VBDC and how it's structured?
Sure. So the Virginia Beer Distribution Company stemmed from the 2023 Beer Industry Limited Distribution Act. This act allowed for the creation of a limited beer wholesaler within the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. The VBDC, as you said, is modeled off of the Virginia Winery Distribution Company, which was established in 2007. VBDC has 5 board directors. 2 of the board members are owners or managers of a wholesaler, and 2 owners or managers of a brewery, but one of those 2 brewery representatives cannot be represented by a wholesaler at the time of the appointment. And the board members are appointed by the Virginia Department of Agriculture board. The 5th member of the board is the commissioner of VDACS, who also serves as the board secretary.
Okay, great. So that is the VBDC. Now, obviously, people here are interested in how to actually use VBDC. Can you, in broad terms, describe how the VBDC works? It's often, presented as a self-distribution scheme. Is that an accurate representation?
It is often referred to as self-distribution, but sometimes that can imply that the brewery can distribute their product without a wholesale license. It's important to note that we're still adhering to that 3-tier system, and here's how. So during the registration process, the brewery will designate at least one VBDC agent and a VBDC wholesale space. Now, these agents are responsible for delivering the product, administrative tasks, such as collecting paperwork or keeping proper paperwork, uploading products in the system for retailers to purchase, and moving orders along the various order statuses. The VBDC wholesale space is where orders waiting to be delivered must come to rest prior to delivery to the retailer. This space must be large enough to accommodate your largest order. And I've seen really elaborate spaces built, but I've also seen small storage cabinets that you'd purchase from Lowe's, Home Depot, or Walmart. This space has to be separate and lockable from everything else in the brewery and can only have VBDC product and paperwork inside.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be a big deal here. It's achievable even for a small company. You just buy a little locker thing,
Yep.
something. Okay, great. And so yes, we'll talk about this sort of walk through the steps here for what it looks like for a company in practice to go through all of this, especially, since this is a relatively new thing. But first, again, I mentioned that VWDC has been around for a while. VBDC is new. You mentioned that it was recent legislation that stood this up. Can you kind of give us a snapshot of where things are in the process of standing up the VBDC?
Yep. So I started working for VBDC a year ago. The board was appointed in July of 2024. And then since then, we've had a series of 6 board meetings. On October 15th, we began accepting application materials from breweries interested in distributing through VBDC. And since October, we've received over 65 brewery account registrations. Of those 65, we have 8 pending wholesale applications with Virginia ABC. And I'm happy to announce we have 7 licensed locations across the Commonwealth.
Okay, so there are some folks basically in position to start exercising this right now as the licenses are out there. That's great. That's news since we last spoke, so I'm happy to hear that. Um, so yeah, this is all unfolding in real time. So for those that have been issued the license yet, are they able to start selling, or are there more steps they have to get portals populated, that kind of thing?
If they haven't been licensed yet,
Mhm.
no, they can't start selling that product through VBDC. You have to have the location licensed first.
Right. Okay. So if a company, right, if it's not one of those companies that are in that count themselves among the 7 licensed currently, or how many did you say that have started the profile? 60?
Got 65 account registrations and 8 pending applications.
Okay. So if a company, right, isn't among that group and they want to start the process, who is eligible, first of all, to use this? Are there folks that think they might be eligible that aren't, or vice versa? And then what does it look like to get started on the process of registering with VBDC?
Virginia breweries are eligible, and the registration process is completed all online. Breweries ready to register should go to our website, vbdc.org, and click the login/register button in the top right-hand corner of the page. From there, they'll be redirected to another page where they'll click the register button. That's also in the top right-hand corner of the page. The brewery will need their Virginia ABC brewery license information, and it should be entered exactly as Virginia ABC has it. Breweries can check ABC's records by visiting the licensee search tool and plug in their license number. We do have a link to that website on the breweries page of our website. So after the brewery registers their account, they'll make the application fee payment, start submitting required documents such as the VBDC operating agreement, franchise designation form, a property drawing or floor plan of the brewery indicating where the VBDC space will be. We'll submit photos of the secure VBDC space and any applicable TTB amendment paperwork. From there, we'll review the documents, reach out to the brewery's preferred publisher, and coordinate the newspaper publishing. The brewery will receive a posting notice from us to post at the front of their establishment, and they'll upload a photo of that posted notice. We'll submit all this information to Virginia ABC, and a compliance agent will contact the brewery to conduct a site inspection. The timeframe is largely dependent on VBDC receiving documents and payments from the brewery, but if everything is submitted in a timely manner, you can expect the total timeframe to be about 60 days. Now, as far as pricing, there is a $195 non-refundable application fee, an annual $1,005 state license fee, and a publishing fee that varies by publisher but can be around $300. All in all, the brewery is looking at $1,500 to get started and $1,005 every year after that.
Okay, that's helpful for folks to know going in. And I want to kind of reiterate your point about making life easier here, right? It's not like there's a formal 60 days here, but some of the ways to trip yourself up is not having all of the paperwork handy, not submitting payments on time, right? None of the clock starts until that. And being a person who probably deals in too many databases, making sure that all of the characters match. If you've entered your brewery name with the something something brewery in ABC and you don't use the in your public facing, well, double check, make sure that there are apostrophes, those kinds of things, because databases are not the smartest when it comes to matching things. So save yourself the headaches and just double check how you entered it that time, potentially years ago.
Right. And to that point, too, we want to be able to provide a lot of data, like transactional data to the breweries, and having that information, correct from the very beginning allows us, more time to focus on that and less time cleaning up the data. So.
Sure. And just to confirm, VBDC is eligible for any brewery in Virginia that is licensed as a brewery with Virginia ABC, right? So
Right.
obviously there are some product categories that are a little more nebulous or not very clear, but if you're spirits, we're not talking about that. If you're licensed as a winery, including a lot of cideries, there's a separate entity for that. This is specifically for producers of beer as designated by ABC.
Correct.
Okay, great. So let's say that a company makes it through all of these processes, gets stood up. They are, let's say it's one of these companies that is now fully licensed here, and they're in the system. How do they go about making their products available and then receiving and fulfilling orders?
Once they're in the system, the brewery will begin uploading their product information to the product catalog. This information includes the product name, the ABV percentage, ABC approval code, style, and a few other fields. Once this product is verified by the system admins, it's added to the product catalog. Retailers will use this catalog to make their purchases. The brewery will receive an email indicating that they've received a new order. They'll go into the system and move that order along the various order statuses. And once the order is finalized, in a finalized status, it must be in the designated VBDC space and ready to be delivered.
Okay, that's when they move it to the locker or locked space or whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so let's say they have a product that they list in there. There'd be different entries for, a half barrel keg of a Pilsner versus a 6-pack or case of 12-ounce bottles, let's say. Those would be separate, that would be in there. And it's up to them to both set the price and maintain the inventory.
That's correct. So it's up to them to set the price. However, we don't keep inventory information on our system.
Yep.
And that's for tax purposes. If we were to keep inventory, we would have to report on that and pay taxes on inventory. So
So it's up to the brewery to put something up or take it down. If it's a seasonal item, let's say, you have to know that, well, it's now, what is it, February 19th. You got to pull down that pumpkin beer if it's not available anymore. It's on you.
Right. And it's as simple as going into that product and deselecting the active checkbox.
Okay. So once you load in your whole inventory or catalog, you can turn them on or off as they see fit.
Mm-hmm. And when August comes around, you can mark that product as active again.
There you go. Nice. Makes things easier. And a question that I don't think I've asked yet, but pricing, right? The pricing that's available is the price that they're willing to deliver to the accounts. that they're selling to, the fees that are associated with VBDC, what does that look like for breweries in terms of like the fees that are paid to VBDC?
Sure. So our transaction fees are split between whether the brewery is a limited brewery or a standard brewery. So for limited or farm breweries, that transaction fee is 3%.
Mhm.
For all other breweries, it's 4%. I should also note too that for kegs, the board has approved a $30 deposit per keg, regardless of size. So you don't have to build in a keg deposit into your pricing. That's already built in.
Oh, okay. That is good to know. Yes, you don't want to bake that on there. All of a sudden your numbers start not matching if you're double billing for that.
Right.
Okay, good to know. So all that seems pretty simple, and then it's up to the brewery once they've gone through, they've finalized that particular transaction, they move the product to the designated space, and then it's up to them to fulfill, right, to go and deliver that product. And then it's up to them working with their customers, right, the retailers, as to how they manage that. They might say, hey, we drive on Tuesdays and Fridays to this region. You know,
Mhm.
that's it's up to them. There's, VBDC doesn't get involved in the fulfillment. They just track when those depletions are made, essentially.
Yep. And the retailers have the opportunity to, they have a dialogue text box that they can, type notes into the brewery, only deliver on Wednesdays or deliver to the back door. And the brewery can make notes to the retailer as well. So it goes both ways.
Okay, great. Yeah, just I'm sure for folks that might be doing this for the first time, there will be a learning curve in terms of your individual retailers, but all of that will be, up to the one-on-one conversations with each retailer as to how they're going to manage that. Okay.
Mhm.
So there may be instances when a brewery has a retail account that wants to carry their products, but they're not using VBDC yet, right? This is a new portal for them. So they might be working with a traditional distributors or a handful of those already to carry other products, but they haven't made any purchases via VBDC. What can breweries do to help facilitate that sale?
Once the location is licensed, the brewery will receive a welcome kit from us. And inside the kit are retailer rack cards, kind of like a brochure.
Mhm.
It's double-sided and it's got a QR code that links the retailers directly to the registration page. Alternatively, the brewery can help the retailer set up the account by taking the same steps they took to register their account. Only they should select purchase beer during the registration instead of
Mhm.
selling beer, obviously. The retailer has to be the one to create the account for security purposes, but after the retailer is active in our system, the brewery can create orders on behalf of retailers in their designated territories.
Okay, yeah. So I'm sure that's helpful for those who might be working with an account, right? A local restaurant or small shop that wants to carry their product but may not be tech savvy, or obviously if they're not using it currently, so there will be a little bit of a learning curve, and it's good to know that the breweries themselves can help the retailers through this process, since any new system always has a little bit of a friction to it. That's great. So I guess if we've covered this a little bit, but just to kind of make sure we understand the delineation of responsibility. So when a brewery makes a sale using VBDC, can you just kind of walk through again what VBDC will be carrying out and what's on the plate of the producer?
Sure. So VBDC is a staff of two. It's me and my financial analyst, Missy Johnson. Some of the participants online may have received correspondence from her or will receive correspondence once they start the application process. But the VBDC admins will handle the payment processing of physical checks, wholesale tax reporting and payment, and then payment to the breweries for the sales.
Mhm.
The brewery or the designated wholesale agent in this case
Mhm.
is responsible for making contact with the retailer, determining the desired delivery window, as we discussed, delivering the product, and collecting the payment if the invoice is marked COD or check on delivery.
Mhm.
The wholesale agent should mail that payment to the address on our website for processing. That website's down at the very bottom. It's a PO box.
Okay. And there is an option for online payment or ACH transfer as well.
There are. So we have a relationship with FinTech, and then we also have ACH set up on our website as well. We do prefer those electronic payment methods.
Yes, I'm sure it makes life easier, fewer steps, right? Just to make sure that it's, you're not literally mailing checks around and all that. But hey, sometimes retailers want to do check to start, but hopefully that's people can get their partners to go ahead and pay online, make life easier for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, that is good to know. So there is a cap to the amount that breweries can sell using VBDC each year. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's 500 barrels per calendar year.
Calendar year. Okay. So yes, and that's right. Obviously, you add that up depending on the different formats that you have here, but it's all told 500 barrels, after which you've exhausted it. You can no longer, so you have to wait for January 1 to roll around again. And some folks may exhaust that, other folks that might be a huge number for them, depending on the scale of their brewery. But it's a 500 new barrels of distribution that's available to them.
Yep.
And right, so let's say there are some breweries that are already in the distribution world through independent wholesalers, that middle tier, the 3-tier system. That's definitely the case. These breweries can still use VBDC, but how should they be thinking about the relationship between their distributor partners in Virginia and VBDC sales?
It can get a bit tricky if there's an existing distributor, but it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So if a brewery has an existing agreement with a distributor, they should look carefully over their existing agreement and see if there are any territories that would not overlap with a new distributor. If the current agreement includes all of Virginia territories, then they'd have to reach out to the distributor and see if they can be released. I will say that, if I owned a brewery and had a distributor, I would have that distributor kind of further out from my immediate brewery and then distribute with VBDC in a closer proximity to my brewery.
Yeah, it's much harder for, a brewery doesn't have the infrastructure to run trucks, especially relatively small volumes. 500 barrels a year can go fast if you're talking about reaching, the far corners of the state. That's a lot. And so, right, it being a franchise state, and it's, you have to designate in that franchise agreement with your distributors, if you're signed on with somebody, the territories they cover, and that contract, right, can be flexible. It might be this distributor represents this brewery in this region with these types of accounts, or whatever it might be. So if you're thinking about, hey, I'm in with grocery stores with this distributor over here, they may not service on-premise accounts, right? So taking a good look at your contract, your franchise agreement with them, finding out where you stand, and then if there's room for negotiation, if there's an area that, hey, distributor X, you don't even visit these accounts in my backyard. I know they want my product. Not worth your time to visit them because they're not big enough. Are there ways that we could make this work where I could still make this sale without depriving you of sale? So I know that all of this is going to be completely individualized for each brewery and their relationship with their distributors, but it sounds like You just really need to make sure that you're not breaching territorial exclusivity with any distributors who may be signed on within Virginia, is the long and short of it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And then I would even say like sometimes these agreements can come down to a product level. Like the distributor only distributes these products or these brands.
Sure.
And so, like you said, it does come down to that agreement and really just going through it with a fine tooth comb. So,
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Especially if you have multiple product lines or they only carry flagships, maybe this is a, opportunity to move some of your deeper cut offerings to local markets. That might be the move. So yes, it's a good time to be having those conversations if you're considering VBDC, right? So we talked a little bit about VWDC. There are definitely producers that are out there that have both brewery and winery licenses, or other people who have used VWDC. Are there any major ways in which VBDC differs from VWDC?
so license cost is one. It's $1,005 for the VBDC license compared to 240 for the VWDC license. The transaction fees are different. It's 3%, as I said, for limited or farm breweries, and then 4% or for standard breweries. The come to rest period is different for us. VWDC has an exemption for the come to rest period. And the come to rest period is the period in which the product must sit in the space before it can be delivered. VBDC doesn't have an exemption from that come to rest period just yet. So hopefully during the next General Assembly session, an exemption can be added to the VBDC clause, but currently the come to rest period is 4 hours.
Okay. Yeah, that's it's not too long. You don't have to plan too far out, but certainly important to know if you're planning on making deliveries, the next day, just put the product in the locker so that in the morning you can document, hey, it spent overnight in that space. When the driver comes to pick it up, they're not hamstrung by a 4-hour wait. Makes a long delivery day.
Yeah. And then as we touched on before, the barrel limit is 500.
Okay. And yeah, for the average Virginia brewery, that's a very large volume, right? Most breweries are, under 1,000. So we're talking about a pretty sizable amount for a lot of companies. So,
right.
So with this kind of whole system being stood up right now, what does success look like for you at the VBDC?
So for this fiscal year on the licensed location side, I'm looking to have at least 40 locations by July 1st. For breweries overall, success to me is a larger distributor, gaining notice to these breweries and wanting to distribute the brewery's products that they wouldn't have otherwise known about without VBDC. For transaction payments, we'd really like retailers to pay via fintech or ACH. As we touched on, these options are secure. They do allow for the brewery to receive their payout every month much quicker, especially if the order was delivered on the last day of the month and that invoice reflects check on delivery. It's likely that they're not going to be getting paid for that order during the next round of payouts. And for retailer registrations, I'd like to see that number increase exponentially. Currently, we have a little more than a dozen retailers, which isn't a lot compared to 65 breweries that are interested in distributing through VBDC.
Sure. But I know some of that pipeline is the chicken and egg of, right, once more breweries are using it, they probably have customers ready and willing to receive product. They just need it. So as more breweries will come online, and then of course there will eventually be the self-reinforcing cycle of, hey, this account is already created. They want to carry another product under VBDC. So there'll be more and more retailers already in the system for people to be able to access. But all that will come. Just right now, I'm sure everyone's excited that it's up and running. It's been I know the beer community has been talking about it for a long time since VWDC got stood up. So it's great that it's finally here.
Yeah.
Um, well, I don't see any questions that are in here right now, and I know that we've gone through most of the things we said we were going to talk about today, but before I wrap us up, is there anything that you'd want our audience to know before they leave today about VBDC?
I just kind of would reiterate that, if I owned a brewery, I'd want to start out distributing through VBDC. If that's an option, this distribution model can be extremely rewarding if you put in the work of building relationships with the retailers. Yeah, I would encourage the breweries to visit our distribution roadmap page next to the login/register button to see if our model is a good fit for you. Uh, I'd argue that, our model offers a lot of flexibility. You can grow at your own pace, see what works, what doesn't, and you kind of get a feel for the distribution industry as a whole and see what's all involved in that. So
Yeah, it's a great tool for folks who might not be ready or haven't been interested in traditional distribution yet, right? I know it's a big swing to go and ink that relationship, especially in a franchise state. So this is a great way to get your company out there, start seeing sales outside your own walls, and hopefully continue growing your business. So awesome. Well, Dakota, really appreciate you joining me and sharing insights today. Thank you all for joining us for today's discussion on the Virginia Beer Distribution Company. Our next webinar is going to be taking place on March 25th. We're going to be talking about dialing in production processes. So hopefully you all can join that. But for now, thanks for joining.
I agree. Thank you, Dakota. Thank you, Chris. Great information as always. And thank you to everyone who attended today. You will receive an email with a link to the recording. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. These resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. And we do hope to see you all on March 25th. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
thank you.